All right, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room right away.
Oh.
Bring on Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated. How you doing, Albert? Good to see you.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
All
How you doing,
right.
Albert, what's up, brother?
The national champion Ohio State Buckeyes had 14 players drafted. That is the
Gotta be the most, right?
most by any school. It is one off of Georgia's 2022 haul of the most drafted by any team coming off of a national championship game. They had the most teammates chosen in the first round of the draft. The Ohio State had 4 Buckeyes when the Chiefs made Josh Simmons the final pick of the first round draft. Congratulations, Albert. Congrats, bud.
Wow, no caveat. How about that?
Don't worry. I'm sure it's coming,
There isn't
Albert.
one.
Oh, it's coming.
I was waiting.
There isn't one. No, listen. When Michigan had 3 of the first 13, and then North Dakota State had one chosen before Ohio State in the first round, I was texting it with my chest to him and Don Weir, money manager of the Stars. You know, I was having my fun.
I texted guys. I texted 2 words.
You said
watching.
Keep watching is what you said. And I'm like, keep watching what? Like the first 13 picks of the draft aren't going to be traded. Not like there's a challenge flag and you can overturn it. You know, like I don't know what you're talking about. But then no, as soon as Emeka Ibuka went to Tampa, which by the way, Baker's going to love him. Then then we're off and running.
Oh, Albert, I'm so excited for Travion Henderson. Let's go, baby.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. And don't forget, like much like Michigan after last year's, what was it, 13 players?
Correct.
That haul.
Yep.
Some of their best guys were still in school. I think you could argue Ohio State's 2 best players are still in school.
Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith. Those are the 2.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. And one of them is staying for money, right? Is that what it is, or
wow?
Oh, we're going back to that now. Like you guys didn't pay for the freshman quarterback who's never played it down.
No, congrats. Yeah, it's all good.
That's off the table for you now, Rich. That line is off the table.
Gladly. Back here on the Rich Eisen Show with Albert Breer. By the way, I'm sitting at the Rich Eisen Show desk furnished by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger has the right product for you. Call clickgrainger.com or just stop by. Albert Breer, walk me through what you know about the first trade that happened, where the Jaguars go up to 2. Why was Cleveland willing to not draft Travis Hunter? Walk me through what you know about the first massive trade of this draft and the biggest.
Well, I think for Cleveland, a lot of it comes back, Rich, to the Deshaun Watson trade. And I think they were finally feeling the effects of the draft pick drain over the last few years, in that they were getting aging in certain spots on their roster at running back, along the offensive line, and they didn't have young players coming up to replace those guys. You could even argue at linebacker with, the situation injury-wise with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So, I think it was just sort of the Browns taking an honest look at where they were as a team and basically conceding to themselves, we're not a player away. We have some work to do here. And this was a way to sort of reset and go back and build up the guts of the roster again. And look, I think everybody on balance would say they did pretty well, to only drop 3 spots, add a 2 this year, add a 1 next year. Potentially maybe put themselves in a position to draft a quarterback next year. I'd say overall, like you can see the Browns' strategy was pretty clear. And I think they did well to get Mason Graham at 5 and then early in the second round, get Carson Schlesinger and Quinshon Judkins. Those were all, things they needed. The Jaguars are interesting to me because, like they did a lot of background work on Travis Hunter, but they were very disciplined about not doing the extra stuff that you'd normally do with a guy you're going to put that much investment in, right? Like, so they didn't do the 30 visit because they weren't doing those. They wanted to have a level playing field for all the prospects, but they did a ton of work. And, I think what's interesting here is like with Cleveland, I just mentioned, the timeline. It's like, okay, can we build fast enough? And they just sort of determined we got to build the guts of this roster back up. We're not that close. Where with Jacksonville, I think it was almost the moves you would see a team that's on the precipice of something really big make. And I sort of wonder, does this mean they think pretty highly of what they inherited? And because this is a sort of move like the James Gladstone and Liam Cohen were part of in Los Angeles. And the difference here is the Rams had demonstrated history of winning when they were making those moves, when they went and got Jalen Ramsey, when they went and got Matthew Stafford, and the Rams did it for veteran players. In this case, you don't have demonstrated history, and you're doing it for a rookie. So it'll be interesting to see if the Jaguars wind up being a 10-11 win team, because that's the other part of it, right? Is like if you win 10 or 11 games, then next year you're giving up what, like the 23rd pick? Whereas if you're what the Jaguars have been the last couple of years, you're giving up something in the top 10.
Well, I mean, and just to revisit everything you just said, that the Browns weren't just one player away, but what if that one player plays two positions and brings a significant amount of buzz that's required for a team that could use it? And Jacksonville taking that advantage, being just 3 away and saying, we'll flip a 2 for them. We'll lose a 1 next year. But they also did improve their 4th and 6th round picks as well. So it's not like that they did get something along with Hunter. That said, I love their aggressiveness. What is your first blush knowledge about the plan they have in place for Travis Hunter?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I can't wait, and I'm sure you're the same way. This might be the most I've covered the league 20 years. This might be the most interesting prospect I can remember, in 20 years of covering the league.
Albert, you and I have done many a schedule release show together back in the day. I don't recall the last time I said I can't wait to see the schedule to see who Jacksonville's playing first.
Yeah. I mean, certainly that this puts them on the map, and at least early in the season, we'll see how it goes. How these things can be fleeting, but like at least early in the season, I mean, when I have the Sunday ticket on, I'm going to be watching to see what Travis Hunter's doing, no question. The plan for right now is actually, I think the reverse of what some teams, I'd say most teams would have done. And to be fair, Cleveland was planning this way too. If you heard Andrew Berry talk before the draft, he outwardly said it, like, we're looking offense first. And so Jacksonville, will look at putting him on offense first and then have him sort of minor in defense. Now, that's not the way it was at Colorado. At Colorado, he was majoring in defense, and they had him practicing and meeting on the defensive side of the ball. And the reason why I think is pretty logical, and this is the way most football people would see it, is on offense, you're dictating to the opponent. On defense, you're having to react to what the offense is dictating to you. In other words, like when you're meeting with your teammates and your coaches during the week, you're coming up with a plan on a million different contingencies and all the different things they could do to you, and you have to react on the fly. It takes a lot of study to be ready on a week-to-week basis to play defense. On offense, you can kind of draw it up the way you want, so you can do things to involve a player who might not be a full-time guy. And that's basically what Colorado did with him, Pat Shurmur and those guys. Like they had packages in for him. They would signal routes in to him from the sideline when that was necessary. They were doing what they needed to do to make it work on offense because they felt like he had to spend his time on defense. And that's what's intriguing about him as an offensive player too, by the way, is like he may, because he hasn't spent as much time on that side, just be scratching the surface of what he is as a receiver. But, obviously the Jags, I think, see it as, we can turn him into a difference maker right away on offense, and that'll help us more right away. And then you see like how fast they're going to bring him along on defense. But it'll be interesting to see, because again, it's like the reverse of the way he was doing it at Colorado.
Interesting, the reverse of the way he was doing it at Colorado. I just want to see him out there every snap. Just honestly, like let him tap his helmet and tell you when it's time. Otherwise, just go for it. Well, the kid's the one thing I loved about him, he doesn't seem to be anything but loving the moment and living in it. Like dancing to going out on the stage before the draft, dancing to Whitney Houston cover songs, and then living his life, man.
I'll give you a good story about his passion for football. This was one of the things that the Jaguars were able to kind of ferret out. There's the coach at Jacksonville State was actually close friends with Les Snead. He coached at Eufaula, the high school that Les graduated from in Alabama, and he actually was an assistant coach at Colorado a couple of years ago. Now he's the Jacksonville State head coach, and so Les put this coach in touch with James Gladstone, who of course Gladstone and Les are tied at the hip. So this coach told James Gladstone. So maybe one of the coolest things about what he was doing for us at Colorado was in between series, he was picking up on stuff while he was out there. So he was giving coaches like the full 360 view of what he was seeing out there. So he could tell them as a receiver, like, here's what I'm seeing from the defense. And he could also tell them why it was happening, because he could think like a corner. And the same thing the other way around. He could go out there as a corner and say, this is what they're trying to do with us with this receiver, because he could see it through the receiver's eyes and through the offense's eyes. And you can't do that unless you're fully invested in football. You know what I mean? Like, you can't go out there and think that way and have that sort of view of the game if you aren't really engaged day to day and like just thirsty for knowledge about football. And you can't pull off what Travis Hunter pulled off in general, from a conditioning standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, from a focus standpoint, from a study standpoint, if he isn't fully in on football. So that's why this is like the rare, to me at least, that's why this is the rare high ceiling, high floor guy, right? You are going to have so many cracks at getting this right. So even if it's not a full version of what you hoped, which I mean, I don't know, all pro on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Like, you're at the very least going to have a lot of cracks and a lot of different ways of getting it right, which makes him different again than almost any other prospect we've ever seen.
Got to be born that way, obviously, with the God-given talent, also with the heart that beats inside, the brain that is required, the smarts that is required. And then also, again, just hearing how I'm picking up on this nuance, the way that they're playing me, the way that they're standing there, the way that the scheme is, the way that this is happening, and being able to do it on both sides of the ball, left and right football brain, is exactly the influence of Deion Sanders. I've heard Deion talk all the time about when somebody winds up, somebody stands across me like this, I know that's how they're going to play me, like that. I know when they're, you look down and see the pressure on the balls of their feet as opposed to sitting back. I know exactly if it's run or pass. That's what he clearly has helped create a unicorn. And I could not be more happy for Jacksonville Jaguar fans. Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'll give you a couple of minutes here, even though we've been talking about it for days. But why did Shedeur slip to fifth round status, Albert? You're reporting on that.
So he slipped out of the first round because of talent and performance. I think that really was the long and short of it. I don't think he was seen as a first round talent by very many people. And fair or not, like, that was the feedback I got from a lot of people I trust.
Okay.
Like, that they just did not see a first round talent. Now, again, and I think I've said this to you on the show a couple of times, doesn't mean he can't go in the first round, because if you find a team that sees you differently, that sees you as a fit. I mean, Bo Nix was that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of teams didn't think Bo Nix was a first round talent. There was a fit there for him in Denver. So, like, I think, like, when you're talking about why you didn't go in the first round, the second round, I think it was talent and performance. I think after that, it was everything else. And I think whether you like it or not, football coaches want their backup quarterbacks to blend in with the furniture. And they want them to, like, be seen, not heard. And it's a huge reason of why, like, guys who, like, quote unquote, bring a lot with them didn't have, like, second lives to their careers, like Cam Newton, Jay Cutler. It's why guys like Tim Tebow and Colin Kaepernick didn't get continued shots at going in the league, at staying in the league. People don't want to hear that, but it's the reality of it. Is, like, first and foremost, you want your backup quarterback to be a resource to the starter. If he's young, you want it to be someone you can develop, and you want it to be someone who's going to do all of that in the shadows. And so, like, I think once you get out of the first or second round, now you're looking at depth and developmental guys. And it became hard because of everything else for teams to see Shedeur Sanders that way. And so it became, well, just give me that guy over here who I know is going to develop and who I know is not going to be a problem, and who I know, when the guy at his position slips up, we're not going to have to hear about. Just give me that guy. And I honestly believe that's a big part of it. And then, I think the other element too, Rich, to be honest, like, and I think this is where they screwed up his process a little bit, is, like, he handled the process like he was a top 10 lock, and he never was. And so what did that mean? Well, that meant that he was narrowing down the teams he was willing to go to. He was treating this team different than that team in an interview based on where he wanted to land. And unfortunately, like when you're not a top 10 pick, like you can't handle the process that way because you don't know how the draft's going to fall. So you have to put your best foot forward with everybody. And so, like, did that knock off some teams that might have liked him and took him in the third round or fourth round? I think it certainly could have like narrowed the pool of teams that were willing to take him. So I think it's those things kind of in tandem. The pool of teams willing to take him because of the way that he handled the process, and then also, just kind of the makeup of what teams are looking for in their backup quarterback.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show from Sports Illustrated. Now let's turn the page a little bit because Kirk Cousins is sitting there in Atlanta. And now that we're after the draft and we've seen teams get quarterbacks, and again, some of them are in a quarterback draft class that has been considered lighter than usual. But what does this now look like post-draft? Kirk Cousins sitting where he is, Derek Carr sitting where he is, and his situation. I'll give you the floor on what happens next. Here.
Sure. Well, I mean, as has been the case for the last month, I guess a lot hinges on Aaron Rodgers and what happens with him.
Right.
I think at this point, it's fair to say the Vikings are out of it for now. And unless something goes wrong with JJ McCarthy over the next 6 or 7 weeks, they're probably out of it for good. The trade for Sam Howell takes care of the depth part of the equation, which I think they'd have considered at the right price. If the Falcons were willing to take on the money, they'd have considered bringing Kirk back. But, now that they have Sam Howell on the roster, I think that's sort of off the table for them. And then you look at Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh, I think, is just sort of in that holding pattern, waiting for Aaron Rodgers. We heard what Art Rooney said over the weekend, that, he's confident that they'll wind up landing him. And if Pittsburgh's off the table, I mean, now for Kirk, you're sort of in this, like, I mean, you're waiting for like someone to get hurt. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's sort of where they are. I think the Falcons have been willing to listen. And, there was some feel out there that, Terry Fontenot is going to try to move him on day 3 of the draft. But I'm not sure that the market was out there for him at this point. And you do wonder if the market's just passed him by. Derek Carr is, I think, way more complicated. Things aren't great between him and the team. That's no secret. You can go chapter and verse through everything that happened in March and April. There's the shoulder issue, which, the team feels like is a 2-year-old issue that, does it have to be handled right now? I think that's an open question. And I don't think Carr appreciated the way that some things were handled in March. So, how does that thing end? I don't know, but the fact that they already converted, the minimum from base salary into signing bonus money, which means that money is gone. That money is paid for. They've already paid for Derek Carr for 2025. Tells me it's going to be really hard for anybody to get Derek Carr out of there.
Well, again, if there's no landing spots jumping out at you for Kirk Cousins, there clearly wouldn't be one for Derek Carr. And when you see Spencer Rattler in year 2, Tyler Shuck now fresh to the equation, and I know they're, not everybody's really liking each other right now. I mean, if whatever could be going on right here with his arm and can get fixed, I mean, wouldn't New Orleans be the spot for Derek Carr? Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it should be. And look, like I think we've all seen these situations in the past where a new coach comes in and there's, some saber rattling back and forth, and, has the coach been deferential enough to the starter? And, is there a monetary issue? Does the starter believe that he deserves a reaffirmation of his status that would come through adjustments to the contract? All of that stuff is not unusual when a new coach comes in. And I think that can be fixed, and now that they're past the draft and they know where they're at, and Derek Carr knows that Tyler Shuck is on the roster. And remember, Tyler Shuck was in college for 7 years. He actually has 4 degrees, which is 3 more than I do. And I think he is like as pro ready as any of the guys in this year's draft because of all that experience, because he's coming from Jeff Brom's offense at Louisville. It does put Derek Carr in a spot where it's like, hey, bud, we're not as desperate as we were a week ago. So So if you wanna come back, that's fine. If you want to keep playing these games, we now have an answer.
So won't hold you to it. Just fun. And if you're right, we'll bring it up. If you're wrong, this never happened. How does that sound, Albert? For a deal before I even ask the question. The number of rookie starting quarterbacks in 2025. Give it to me.
So you know that like everybody ignores these if they're right? And then if you get them wrong, then everybody knows about it.
I'm flipping it. We will bring it up and say, he said this the Monday after the draft. And if you're wrong, this never happened. I promise you that.
All right.
Take your shot.
I'll say two. I'll say Cam Ward and Tyler Shuck.
All right, so then give me the
I
one.
think eventually Dart will play. I don't think it's going to be at the beginning of the year.
Okay, but then that's three then. You just gave me a third.
So what was the premise?
The number of kids that just got drafted at the quarterback position in the 2025 draft that will play. Everyone that's on the screen right here.
Just play.
But they're gonna start a game. Year. Starters this year, the number.
Okay. So, well, the start a game part of it, you know what? I'll have some fun with this.
Do what you want. Again,
I'll give you 4.
Okay.
I will say Cam Ward will start a game. Cam Ward will start every game as long as he stays healthy.
Right.
Tyler Shuck will start a game, and I think probably a good chunk of the season. I think Jackson Dart will start at some point.
Okay.
And I guess this is going to get aggregated. One of the Browns rookies will start a game at some point.
Mm-hmm.
One of the Browns rookies. And look, like, I think, honestly, if we're being honest about this, like, so I love Dylan Gabriel as a player, but I think Shedeur is more talented. You know, like, I mean, we can talk about like the talent issue and how it was overblown with Shedeur, right? Like, and I don't think he was ever considered by anybody, you know, who actually studies, you know, these guys for a living. I think he was ever considered top 5 talent, but that also doesn't mean like he's like an undrafted free agent talent wise. You know what I mean? Like, he does have ability. So I do think like in camp, it's going to be, that's going to be such an interesting quarterback room with, you know, Kenny Pickett, who's playing for his career in there, Joe Flacco, who comes in as the starter, and then 2 rookies battling it out. And, I mean, it's not impossible to see a scenario where Shedeur or Dylan Gabriel start the game. And gun to my head, I would think maybe as long as Shedeur internalizes all of this, you know, the right way and, you know, comes out of this, you know, resolved and maybe in that Tom Brady way, like, I'm going to show everybody would it be the Shedeur 5 instead of the Brady 6 then, right?
Well, the Shedeur 143. Actually,
well, no, but how many quarterbacks?
I know that
he was a 6th, right?
Pop it up on the screen again, there,
I think it was,
Mr. Hoskins, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
he was right.
So you're now looking at the Shedeur 5.
The Shedeur 5, there it is.
If he takes it that way, I could certainly see a way where he could get on the field and get a chance to play at some point during the year.
Screw it. While you're being aggregated against your will, is it going to be Shedeur or Dylan Gabriel? Shedeur. Okay. I
like Gabriel too, and I honestly, like, I'm being completely honest when I say, like, I didn't like all the Dylan Gabriel hate that was out there, because he's a really good college player. You know what I mean? And he's small, no question, but he's only 2 inches shorter than Shedeur. You know, I mean, that's like that. So, I was surprised that Dylan Gabriel went ahead of Shedeur, but I didn't think like it merited just crushing Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel was really good in college. I'll tee one up for you here. Mm-hmm. He was one of only 2 quarterbacks to beat the national champs last year.
And the other one was a walk-on. Okay.
He was small also.
I know you did.
Too small to beat us, for sure.
Listen, Gabriel, and we met him. We had him on the show. He was really impressive, and I totally would understand why a team would fall in love with him and say, we are willing to develop you. We're willing to work with you. We're willing to spend a 3rd-round pick on you. It was just the coming back and taking Shedeur later on with trading your last pick to do it. I mean,
when I look at Shedeur, when I look at Dylan Gabriel, why can't he be Chase Daniel, which is a valuable player to have, right?
Sure, I hear you.
Yeah,
Albert, thanks for the time, man. Really appreciate it. You be well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
You got it.
Appreciate
That's
it.
Albert
Thanks,
Breer.
Rich.
Everybody,
See you, buddy.
check out his work. Sports Illustrated, must follow as well on all manners of social media. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.